Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, July the 7th, 2023. On Monday, there was a shooting in Philadelphia in which I think 5 people were killed. That was July the 3rd, the day before Independence Day. And the person arrested for this crime was Kimbrady Carriker, and we do have a date of birth for him, which is October the 27th, 1982. So what I want to do later in this video is look at his chart. I don't have his time of birth. I don't have his place of birth. Place of birth, isn't so important if we don't have his time of birth. But, the date of birth may tell us something. So I want to look at what was happening in his horoscope at the time of the shooting. I also want to make a comparison between Kimbrady Carriker and Vladimir Putin, because they do have something in common. And it's not just the fact that they were both born in the month of October. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Friday, July the 7th, 2023. So this is the chart set for noon, New York, as always. And you can see that the moon is in Pisces. It is moving away from a conjunction of Saturn, and it is applying to a trine of the sun. So in many respects, this is really good. As I say, when we have a favorable aspect between the sun and the moon, it kind of puts a whole day in balance. The sun is the male principle, the positive principle. The moon is the female negative principle, and of course I mean negative in a positive sense, not negative in a negative sense. So we have this trine, and it creates a certain amount of balance in the day. Nonetheless, the moon is quite close to Saturn, so I think many of us are going to have a certain inclination to control our feelings. It's not just going to be all gushing, even though the moon is in Pisces, which is of course a water sign. Another aspect that's going on today, even though it's separating, is the fact that Mercury in Cancer is separating from Uranus in Taurus. I think we'll still feel this aspect wherever we are today, wherever in the world we are. It's quite an exciting aspect. Mercury is the planet of the mind, the planet of ideas, and so when it's sextile Uranus, it's excited. Brand new ideas start coming to the surface. Well, not really coming to the surface. They kind of come from the sky because it's Uranus, and so we have an opportunity to take these ideas, talk about them, and perhaps to put them into practice, to actually ground them. But when I say talk about these ideas, I don't think I mean talk in a very free-flowing kind of way. That's because today there are no planets in air signs. You'll notice there's a blank. Aquarius is an air sign, Gemini, Libra. It's all blank. So because there's no air, there's not going to be quite that free flow of ideas, we would expect with a bit of air in the chart. So we don't have that. And so, if you are an air sign, if you're a Gemini, Aquarius, Libra, you might feel that you can't fully express yourself, not in that free flowing kind of way that you feel most comfortable with. But overall, I think with that moon trine the sun, moon in Pisces, sun in Cancer, I think it should be, for most of us, an okay day. Now, as far as my forecast for the 12 signs are concerned, here we go. These are my forecasts for today, Friday, July the 7th, 2023. Aries, something becomes clear. It's not a flash of inspiration, but rather a gradual intuition. And when you are alone, you can make some financial rearrangements. They may be surprising to other people, but overall, they could be very useful. Taurus, your hopes for the future are being challenged, but a challenge should be welcomed and not treated like a dead end. Indeed, a constructive argument could make the difference between success and failure. Gemini, you're caught between pessimism and optimism. So much to look forward to, so much to hold you back. Nothing is going to be easy, but persistence is likely to pay off. Cancer, relationships need to be navigated with due deference to the other person's point of view. A bit of toleration and understanding will help smooth things along. Leo, your brain is on good form, even if few people notice. You get on with the job and incrementally the tide starts moving your way. But don't be in a hurry. Virgo, there are some places where you have a free pass and other places where every inch has to be fought for. Let your friends and colleagues inspire you. Libra, there's no choice. It has to be done. You don't feel in the mood, but moving from A to B requires a clear space, both physically and psychologically. Scorpio, today you're not into half measures. You want to do things properly or not at all. And this is particularly the case when it comes to your creative self-expression. It's good that you have such high standards. Sagittarius, some people are exciting and also very talented. Other people are boring and they try to drag you down with their limited view of the world. It's therefore important that you make the right choices. Capricorn, your presence may not be spectacular, but it is nonetheless hard to ignore. And when you start speaking, it is clear that you know what you're talking about. Harsh language is quite unnecessary. Aquarius, if you don't like the way things are going, then you don't have to put up with it. However, the way you assert yourself, especially in a professional and financial setting, needs to change. Pisces, you are sensitive to what is happening in your immediate environment, and you also have some interesting thoughts. First, you see a problem, and then you see an opportunity. So I am now going to transition to the I Ching. So, as always, I threw 3 coins in the air, asking a question. What is Friday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? And the first hexagram I got was the receptive. You can see that you've got 6 lines and all 6 lines are broken. So the receptive means that we have to be quite passive. It's not a time for taking big initiatives. It's not a time for being creative. We have to observe, listen, watch, rather than be an actor. So this situation does have a few complications. This first line moves. It moves to an unbroken line, and This is kind of warning us or telling us that we're going to start to see the first signs that things are actually beginning to disintegrate. I mean, not necessarily in anything we're directly involved with, but something that's kind of important. We're going to see signs that something's wrong. Um, a structure that isn't strong enough. Evil people coming to the fore. Something that just isn't going to last. So we have to be aware of that. So we certainly can't be complacent. And while this hexagram to the receptive is passive, it's not necessarily about being passive to the extent of allowing something to completely break down. So what do we do? Well, still, in the first instance, we probably don't want to get too involved. Yeah, we're aware there's a problem, but we do need to show some reserve. Perhaps we're trying to work out what we're going to do about the situation. Just, you know, feel the vibes. You know, it really is with the receptive, feeling the vibes, just feeling what's going on around us, using our sensitivity to work it all out. But then the top line moves, and the symbol that the I Ching uses for this top line moving is two dragons fighting. One dragon representing the good, the other dragon representing the bad. And this may indicate the fact that in the end we may have to do something to stop the rot. There may just be no choice. But in the process of trying to stop the rot, we ourselves are going to get hurt. You know, there's no such thing as as getting away with it. You know, we're going to get, if you want to take something on, yeah, there's going to be damage. You know, I don't think I'm talking about physical damage, but whenever one gets involved in a conflict, there's exhaustion, for example. So we might get quite exhausted trying to deal with this problem, trying to correct the problem, trying to address the decay, which has finally reached a stage where we have no choice but to do something about it. Now, the receptive, this hexagram, it does move, and it moves to hexagram number 21, which is biting through. And biting through relates to penalties. You know, we have to administer penalties as a way of dealing with a problem, dealing with the chaos. Now, the I Ching would be using the symbolism of a government or a king having to administer penalties in order to control his country. I don't think we're going to be in that kind of position. Rather, we're going to have to be tough. This might mean distancing ourselves from people who are doing us no good, distancing ourselves from troublemakers. It may be that we have to tell people what we think. Maybe we have to give people a piece of our mind. We may have to criticize them. We may have to withdraw our support. That kind of thing. But you need to look at the situation. So if you are in a situation where things seem to be disintegrating, or one aspect of your life or something you're involved with is in a state of decay, you may have to actually bite through and address the problem and sort it out, even if in the short term that isn't pleasant. It requires some toughness. You know, that's biting through something tough. It's just got to be done, because if we don't do it, the decay and the rot will continue. So that's all I'm going to say about the I Ching. So I'm now going to go and talk about Kimbrady Carriker and indeed Vladimir Putin. So let's see. This date of birth is, I I want to make it absolutely clear that I've got the date of birth correct, because there's nothing so embarrassing when you talk about someone's date of birth in a YouTube video, or when on my blog, when I do it sometimes, I'd get a date of birth wrong. You spend ages building up this elaborate birth chart and saying this and that, and it's all based on a date of birth, and then suddenly you realize that the date of birth is wrong. There is nothing so embarrassing as that. You just want to just disappear and delete everything, and so I try to be really careful. So to confirm that I've got the date of birth right, I'm using a court document, and this is from the First Judicial District of Pennsylvania Court Summary, and it says Kimbrady Carriker, and you'll see that it has his date of birth 10/27/1982. So that is the American format, month, day, year. So it's on a court document. I can't be any more certain from that. So I just want to demonstrate that I have done all I can to get his date of birth, and I think I've got a pretty reliable source for this birth date. Now, as far as what happened, I will turn to see. I found this is what CNN says about the subject. So what CNN says. So CNN, this was an article Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. Philadelphia mass shooting suspect told police he did it to clean up the neighborhood, sources say. The man accused of fatally shooting 5 people in Philadelphia on Monday night told police in sum and substance that he carried out the attack to clean up the neighborhood, 2 law enforcement sources told CNN. So we get some other information. In May, Carriker shared posts from pro-gun groups supporting former President Donald Trump and the Second Amendment. In June, he shared a mocking video of a speech by President Joe Biden and added his view that Biden was trying to take our arms. Now, some of you who are not fans of Joe Biden might see this as an example of CNN deliberately linking Carriker with Trump and the Second Amendment lot as a way of pursuing their political agenda. I'm going to be neutral on this. But it's something that CNN does seem to do. They had to say that this man is a supporter of Trump and is in favor of the Second Amendment, just sort of to make that association. But you can take it how you please. He posted on the same day, "The only thing more terrifying than blindness is being the only one who can see." And so we get officers arrested Carriker during a chase on foot, and he had an AR-style rifle, a 9mm handgun, and so on. So what else? Facebook. On his Facebook page, Carriker posted pictures of armed protesters dressed as Black Panthers taken at a 2020 Atlanta protest. He posted that they were exercising their First and Second Amendment rights. And there's also a religious dimension. The page has references to God and prayer posted in the last week, including a passage from a book of Isaiah posted by Carriker that begins, "I alone am the Lord, the only one who can save you." Another post quotes Nehemiah, "But we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. So, that gives you an idea about Kimbrady Carriker. So let's now look at his horoscope. So, as I said, I've not got his time of birth. I kind of assumed he's born in Philadelphia. If he was born somewhere else, it's not going to make a big difference, because these are the noon positions for October the 27th, 1982. A couple of points about this chart. Firstly, look at the moon. It's kind of separated from the rest of the chart. In Indian astrology, this would be Kamadruma yoga. And so if you've got Kamadruma yoga, your moon is got no planets in its own sign, no planets in the previous sign, and in the sign following. So it's alone. So he definitely has Kamadruma yoga. And so when you've got Kamadruma yoga, it's about a lack of connection with other people, with society, and so forth. Now, Kamadruma yoga is quite common, and lots of people have Kamadruma yoga, and it's not a big problem for them. But in the context of what's happened, maybe we can see Kamadruma yoga working. We also have a very concentrated chart. All his planets are in basically 3 signs: Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. Maybe that means there's a lack of objectivity. If you had a planet here, you might be able to see the other side of the coin. It's just very focused, particular interests. So that's something to note. Also, no planets in Earth signs, except the South Node in Capricorn, which doesn't really count. So there might be a lack of grounding. Fantasies, ideas, we saw from the CNN article, he's talking, there's Trump, and there's Second Amendment, and there's Bible quotations, and, where is the actual grounding? And for him, that might be an issue. We also see that he has a Mars. Well, he actually has a Mars-Saturn sextile. Now, under normal circumstances, a Mars-Saturn sextile is actually quite good. I know I often talk about Mars-Saturn as being the death axis, but if you've got a sextile, it means that you can take your frustrations, perhaps, and actually put them into something concrete, something useful. Especially as Saturn is in Libra, in the sign of its exaltation. That could be really useful, to really focus on one particular thing and really make a great success out of it. His Mars is strong also because it's in mutual reception to Jupiter. Mars is in the sign of Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Jupiter is in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, so they're in mutual reception. So that Mars-Saturn sextile could be very useful. But Mars-Neptune conjunction might be a bit difficult. Mars is how you apply your energy. So you put it next to Neptune, and that suggests it may be difficult to apply your energy in a coherent way. You might get sidetracked. You might get sidetracked by fantasy. You might, in certain situations, Mars-Neptune is connected with drugs or crime or whatever. Or, you might pick up on something you see on the internet, and that Mars-Neptune kind of, with its deluded quality, draws one in. I often associate Mars-Neptune with sleaze. There can be something a bit sleazy about Mars-Neptune contacts. But overall, I don't think that Mars-Neptune contact is is really very helpful. Now, I should point out something about this moon. This is a noon chart. Probably he's got the moon in Pisces, but it could be anywhere between, I don't know, 26 Aquarius and maybe 10 Pisces, so, or something like that. So we don't know for sure that he has got his moon in Pisces. Probably has, but it could well be in the previous sign in Aquarius if he was born at the beginning of the day. So as far as what was going on during the actual shooting, so here's the chart for the shooting. So this is July the 3rd, 2023. I think it was in a suburb of Philadelphia, around 8:30. So this is a fairly accurate chart, I would have said. So what do we notice about this chart in terms of Carriker? Well, Neptune is at 27 Pisces. So one's thinking, well, what is the relevance of that? Well, if you think about Carriker's chart, he had Mars at 26 Sagittarius. So if we turn that into we put there we are. So here we've got Carriker's chart in the inner ring, and the shooting chart in the outer ring. I'll make it a bit bigger. There's his Mars. So Neptune in Pisces has recently been square Carriker's Mars. So I don't know, over the last year or two, this Neptune may have had quite an undermining impact on his Mars. I mean, it does seem that Neptune at 27 degrees 41 is moving away from the Mars, but it's still having an influence. So I think that's certainly something to consider in terms of the broader background to what happened on Monday. On a more short-term level, Mars, you should always look at Mars if you've got a shooting. Mars was at 26.5 Leo. So you can see that Mars was trine Carriker's own Mars. It was applying to a trine of his Mars. So I know that in astrology one often thinks that trines are a good aspect, but really they're an aspect about something moving easily. Emotions moving easily, it being easy to translate one's thoughts into action or one's feelings into action. So transiting Mars, trine his natal Mars, would have facilitated that. And Mars was also making a sextile to his Saturn, quite a close sextile to his Saturn. So you might think, oh, well, that's about being disciplined, focusing one's energy, deciding on a goal. Well, I suppose if indeed he did shoot these 5 people, then, well, I suppose he shot 5 people. I mean, I don't know how you go about shooting 5 people, but the Saturn is about making things happen. But more importantly, let's look at the Mars-Saturn midpoint. The Mars-Saturn midpoint, you see, it's quite easy to tell because they're all bunched up together. So if Mars is at 26 Libra, sorry, if Saturn is at 26 Libra and Mars is at 26 Sagittarius, then the midpoint of Mars and Saturn is going to be at around 26 Scorpio, 26 and a half Scorpio or something like that. And so there we have it. We have Mars making a square to his Mars-Saturn midpoint at the time of a shooting. And, that fits perfectly because Mars and Saturn, they're the death pair. You put Mars on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and that really describes what happened last Monday. So that kind of works. On a very short-term level, the moon was at 19 Capricorn at the time of the shooting, and his Mercury is at 1936 Libra. So moon was square his Mercury. Now, having moon square one's Mercury, it happens every fortnight to all of us. So in a way, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal if you're already perhaps riled up or upset about something, and moon squaring your Mercury is going to perhaps hit the way you're thinking and so forth. And it might have been a final trigger, though of course I should point out, he hasn't been found guilty of these shootings. So he is the alleged shooter. He has been arrested, but he hasn't been found guilty. We must always remember that when talking about this kind of thing. So those are a few points about the chart. The chart for when the shooting happened. It's a good idea, though, to look at Kimbrady Carriker's solar return. So, the solar return is when the sun returns to the place it was when you were born. It always happens around your birthday. So if we look at the solar return prior to the shooting, we see that Mars is at 2532 Gemini. So that 2532 Gemini is 1 degree off the opposition to his natal Mars, which is at 26 Sagittarius. And Mars is square Neptune. So we're getting a Mars-Neptune signature there. So we saw that he had Mars-Neptune conjunction in his natal chart. We saw that recently he has had, over the last couple of years, he's had Neptune square his Mars. And then we see in his solar return before the shooting, we see a Mars-Neptune square. So we get this theme of Mars-Neptune coming up again and again. Looking at his progress chart. Well, the progress chart, remember how for secondary progressions, you are saying that every day after you're born represents a year of life. So he is 40 approximately. So you would look to 40 days after he was born to get some idea about what's happening in his 40th year. So what we notice is that, he has Neptune at 2459 Sagittarius, and his Mars is at 2649. So it's about just less than 2 degrees off. And we notice that if we look at the secondary progressions for 40 days after he was born, Neptune has moved on now to 2619. So that progressed Neptune is getting closer and closer to the position of his natal Mars. And this moving closer is just going to be something which is going to be happening over the course of his lifetime. So it's not, it's not specific to that particular day. Now, at this stage, there's one other thing I want to talk about, but first, I want to talk about Vladimir Putin and why Vladimir Putin has a connection with Kimbrady Carriker. So here is Vladimir Putin's chart. You will see that Vladimir Putin has his Mars at 2636 Sagittarius. And just a reminder, Kimbrady Carriker, if assuming we take a noon, we don't know what time he was born, but assuming it was noon, his Mars at 2649 Sagittarius. So the Marses are pretty close. So I've just mentioned how over the last couple of years, a year or two, Carriker would have had Neptune aspect, making a square aspect to his Mars. Likewise with Putin, over the last couple of years, he would have had Neptune making a square to his Mars. Now, if you are an opponent of Putin, if you are a supporter of Ukraine, that would completely support your case, wouldn't it? Because, if you've got Neptune square your Mars and you're Putin, you're going to be making all sorts of mistakes with your country's army, and you're going to, this invasion of Ukraine, you did it as Neptune was squaring your Mars. It's got to be a disaster, hasn't it? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not saying it is going to be a disaster, but certainly if you were an astrologer who was a supporter of Ukraine, the Neptune square Putin's Mars would completely support your case. I mean, it's not a good aspect. And when we look at the new moon on June the 18th, we see that the new moon is at 2643 Gemini. So in other words, the new moon was opposition Putin's Mars. It was also opposition Kimbrady Carriker's Mars. And this new moon was square Neptune. So this new moon was major for both men. Now, in Kimbrady Carriker's case, he got involved in this shooting. If he did it, then that kind of links with the new moon. If he didn't do it and he got arrested by mistake or whatever, same thing. So that new moon certainly affected his, seemed to really affect his Mars. And with Putin, this new moon was about less than a week before Yevgeny Prigozhin launched his coup, whatever it was. So, having Neptune square your Mars, new moon opposition your Mars, potentially fighting for your political life. You've got an army, supposedly an army of mercenaries marching towards Moscow. I mean, that is just complete chaos. So that shows how new moons and astrology in general works. It depends on the individual. You can't have a one-size-fits-all with these astrological events, aspects, whatever. You would not have predicted for Putin that, for example, he was going to go and shoot people, or that he was going to get unjustly arrested for shooting people. That just would have been an inappropriate prediction. Likewise, for Carriker, you wouldn't have predicted for him that he'd be in terrible trouble because an army would be marching on his capital city. That would just be absurd. So it just shows how you've got to consider the situation people are in when making astrological forecasts, and that these events can work on many different levels. One final thing I want to say about the new moon, we had for Kimbrady Carriker. So if we look at the where it worked, there was a new moon right on his Mars. Then there was a full moon, and then this event happened just after the full moon. So you can see just after the full moon. So I have, if you listen to what I've said said about new and full moons. I've kind of suggested that they kind of last for about a fortnight. So this happened actually beyond the next lunation. So maybe I was, that's a bit limited here. 2 weeks. This was I would have said sort of over 2 weeks. So I mean, I think that maybe a new moon and a full moon, the impact, can probably last more than 2 weeks. Probably more like a month. Well, unless it's an eclipse. I mean, eclipses can last for years. But that's another topic. Anyway, that is all I'm going to say about Kimbrady Carriker and Vladimir Putin. And I will talk to you tomorrow.